Welcome back, my friends, to episode 8 of Beyond Bricks and Mortar. Now, today's episode is a special one, where I'm joined by Rabbi Reuven Ibragimov, one of the wise spiritual leaders of the Sephardic Jewish community in Manhattan, as well as all over the world. Now, I find that Rabbi Ibragimov's story is exceptionally fascinating, being someone who essentially shifted into a life of Orthodox Judaism. The story in which he found the inspiration to do so is fascinating in and of itself. However, the value that I truly found in this conversation was in the wisdom that Rabbi Ibragimov shares as it relates to marriage, to love, to relationships. This conversation is truly a special one, and I'm excited for you guys to hear it. I don't want to say much else because I really want to let this podcast speak for itself. So, without further ado, Rabbi Reuven Ibragimov. When you grow up surrounded by the influence of a community that's embedded in Orthodox Judaism, I would imagine that becoming a rabbi is not the most difficult decision to make. It's kind of like the territory. It's what you're already used to. It's what you already know. You're already living the life, and you've made a commitment to that life that you've always and already knew you'd make.
Right.
You, on the other hand, made the decision to move from a life of what many on the outside consider to be a life without restriction.
Right.
And to a life of complete observance and faith, and sharing that faith with the world around you and inspiring others to do the same. So my first question for you is, can you walk me through what led to the decision that you made to devote your life to Orthodox Judaism, and what were some of the implications that decision had on your life when you first made it?
Oh yeah, it's a great question. There's a couple of, it's a long story, and I don't think you have enough time in your podcast.
We have plenty of time.
But I would say, in a nutshell, because it looks like you have a lot that you want to get through over there.
That's okay. Sometimes we don't get to everything.
Okay.
This is meant to be a conversation.
Fine.
I'm not supposed to grill you here.
Okay. So I would say a couple of things. One is, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and my best friend growing up was a great Gentile boy named Frederick Tang, who's Chinese. He spoke Mandarin. I heard Mandarin in my house because they were my neighbors. He was an only child. I had a younger brother, didn't have an older sibling, so he became like a very close friend of mine. Most of my friends I had some Jewish friends, and he was like my best friend. He was a non-Jewish boy. And I often found myself at a very young age, growing up in a home that was proud to be Jewish, but not observant. I found myself defending often, Judaism and Jews, in particular Jews, more so than Judaism. Why do Jews, only wear black and white? Why do Jews have those side locks?
Just like a curiosity.
Yeah, curiosity stuff. And I didn't have any good answers. I'd make stuff up all the time.
Right.
But we were very close, certainly, and they had a lot of interesting theological conversation. But I never had any interest in being a rabbi. Never crossed my mind once. I never liked rabbis. I didn't like authority. I was anti-authority. I was anti any type of authority. I'm not like that anymore. But I saw myself as a secular person who was very proud to be an American, G.I. Joe, a real American hero. I grew up with my Friday night, TGIF shows and my Saturday morning shows, and had some kind of synagogue experiences, was dating. It was whatever that, American experience, Jewish American experience is growing up in the New York area with no restrictions, like you said earlier. The changing point for me, the turning point, was a trip that we took to Poland. It's a little misleading because the trip was really a trip to London. And there were these tickets when in the days where you could only buy airplane tickets from agents. They had something called a Visa, and it was a multi-city destinational ticket. You get to London really cheap. You got to go to Warsaw first. It was JFK.
So you didn't even intend to spend any time.
We're going to go there. We're going to get some cheap beer, go pregame over there. And as we're there, we decided that, our hotel is a few blocks away from this thing called Auschwitz. And let's go visit a concentration camp. And we went to visit this concentration camp, and we're told as we're trying to get in that, sorry, it's closed today, when it's visibly open and there's people and things happening in the camp. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like you can't bar us from coming in. It says your hours are Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. It's 10 o'clock. It's Wednesday. We're going in. It's open. No, it's not. I'm like, nothing's changed in this country. You wouldn't let Jews out of concentration camps. Now you don't let Jews into concentration camps. And, eventually after a lot of fuss and ruckus, a couple of security guards approached us and said, like, calm down, like, what's going on. The concentration camp is closed. The Prime Minister of Israel is visiting today.
Oh, wow.
So Yitzhak Rabin was visiting the concentration camp. And I guess they overheard our New York calls for, we got excited. And he asked if we would join him actually on his tour. So I got a tour of Auschwitz with a delegation from Israel and Yitzhak Rabin and so on and so forth.
Wow.
And it was a very powerful experience. If you've ever been, and if anyone has not been, I recommend definitely going, especially in the context of everything that's happened since October 7th. Although going to Israel not too long ago and being at the kibbutzim, I think that in many ways the Israel kibbutz 10-7 experience is more profound than what I saw.
Yeah, it's still so fresh.
It's so fresh.
Yeah, and you did it already, did you not?
I did it. And there are pictures that I took, and I made them black and white, and it looks like a scene out of Poland from 1930, 1940.
Wow.
But having this experience, looking at a gas chamber, looking at the bunks, the barracks, and then seeing the overwhelming experience that they have in these camps. At the end of the whole tour, you end up in a memorial for the 1.5 million Jewish kids that were killed during World War II by the Germans, and there was this band that was there because of all the dignitaries, and someone said a Kaddish at the time. I remember, and I remember everyone's crying. Everyone is just in tears. It's just so overwhelming, this experience, and I remember crying and feeling sad. But it wasn't because of the loss of life. It was because I wasn't prepared to die for being a Jew. Because I had no way of articulating what it meant to be a Jew. So I understood intuitively that if you can't die for something, you can't live for something. If you can't articulate the why, then how do you get there? So I felt like I was lost.
Wow.
So I had this moment of an identity crisis of well, I know I'm proud. I don't know what I'm proud for and why and how and what does it really mean. And at that point, I made a commitment that I would spend some time figuring it out for myself. And I really believe that when you set your mind on discovering a truth for yourself and you become myopic in your thinking and I need to get an answer to something, doors open up for you and all kinds of possibilities that were impossible before become a reality very quickly for you.
It's amazing how by chance you ended up there at the same time.
Right.
And you took this tour, the level of inspiration that must have hit you in that moment in time.
Yeah.
That's really, really amazing.
Yeah.
And how long did this identity crisis last?
A few months. Until I decided that the only place I could really find answers was in Israel, spending time in a place where I could ask real questions and get real answers. I wasn't afraid of asking difficult questions. I had lots of questions, and I'm meeting the right people, rabbis, mentors, thinkers along the way, the right books, the right reading, and a lot of self-reflection. I came to discover that there is something profoundly beautiful about our faith. And I no longer saw being Jewish as a set of restrictions.
Right, that's what most people see it as.
And I totally relate to that. I related to that very deeply growing up. Why would you want to do that stuff? It's just a whole bunch of restrictions. But instead, I see them as a bunch of tools for success. If you want to be an Olympian, you want to be great, there are going to be restrictions. You can't eat whatever you want. You don't have your own schedule. Judaism demands a certain level of excellence, which is why I believe so many Jews struggle being Jewish. It's not designed for losers or weak-minded people. It requires a tremendous amount of effort and focus, drive. And if you don't have that, it's really hard to feel successful as a Jew.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And even someone who didn't go through, even a similar journey that you went through, I feel as though I've kind of like graduated from a place where I consider Judaism to be a set of restrictions, like for me, I look forward to Shabbat more than anything. It's like I feel like my life is incomplete without it almost.
Right.
I don't feel like this is like a time where I'm not allowed to do stuff. It's more of like a time to embrace other things, to embrace family and to work on Shalom Bayit and all that other stuff. Actually, it's funny. On Friday night this week, my wife was trying to put my daughter to bed, and my daughter took a toy she was holding in her hand and she chucked it at the Shabbat candles, and the Shabbat candles came crashing down. And this was like maybe 15 minutes after we lit candles. So, in that moment in time, like we were pretty happy with how well we handled the situation. We didn't lose our heads and scream and everything. And, after we put her to bed, we looked at each other, and I remember saying to her, I was like, listen, like the Shabbat candles are meant to represent the sanctity of Shabbat, but whether the candles are lit or not don't determine our Shalom Bayit.
Right.
Don't determine our peace in the home. So, and I think we were kind of like, we were okay with what happened. Obviously it's unfortunate,
right.
But I feel like we could have handled it a lot worse.
Right.
So yeah, that was like a nice little moment. What can you speak to regarding the challenges of devoting yourself to a life of religion and spirituality that may help to inspire others who are having a difficult time with their own faith and spirituality?
There's two parts to this. One is that the identity part of it, was like, well, once you find the truth, are you willing to identify externally, internally with your beliefs? And I think before that, it's the quality of the kinds of questions you're asking. Are you really looking for truth? For most people, a lot of what they do Jewishly is superficial. Even, for example, like what you described about Shabbat, and I'm sure it's not superficial by you, but often for many people, well, I'll keep a Shabbat because it makes sense. It's just family time. It's a time where I can invest in ways that I can't during the week. And therefore it becomes more like a practical solution, like a hack to unplug, to connect, but it's void of any spirituality. So Judaism is very spiritual at its core. The idea of holding a cup of water and making a blessing is infusing it with spiritual potential. The idea of having a meal with your family on a Friday night is not just for the meal, it's for the conversation. It's, are you using that time to elevate that moment in time to make it something more meaningful, not just another meal with somebody who's your family. So, it's, if you're asking the right kinds of questions, why am I doing what I'm doing? What's its purpose? What's its function? What am I trying to get at over here? If you're looking for truth, then I believe the identity part becomes easy. It's when it's superficial, when your understanding of your Judaism is superficial, the identity part becomes very tricky. Why do I need to do this? Who am I? And so much of what we do today as Jews is often, mostly, I would say, an expression of whatever community you want to fit into. The size of your yarmulke, what kind of shirt or pants you're going to wear, the kind of shoes, what kind of schools you're sending to. That's all, who you identify with. And I'm okay with all of it. But there has to be something at the core that has to be present. I need to know that you're someone who's thinking deeply about growing. There is no stagnation. There is no standing still.
Yeah, well, Judaism, it kind of teaches us that we're never fully enlightened.
Correct.
That there's always more to learn. But the truth is, when you apply that you could apply that conceptually to pretty much anything in life. If you're a chef and you've reached a point in your career as a chef restaurateur where you feel like you're fully enlightened, then pretty gradually the quality of your cooking and the quality of your food and even the relevance and timeliness of your food goes down and down and down. It's something, food culture is always evolving all the time. So it's kind of like the same thing in Judaism. We're never fully enlightened, no matter how long we've been doing this for. There's always more to learn. There's always more to uncover. There's always more that we don't know.
Many years ago, I met this amazing man named Eliezer Blatt, who was a graduate of Brooklyn College and the School of Acting. And he actually worked on the Bill Cosby Show for 9 years. Didn't grow up observant, became more observant, currently living in Jerusalem, and he's responsible for training rabbis in terms of honing in their public speaking skills. And I was one of his students. And he said one of the things they did on the Bill Cosby show, and the reason why they hired him, is that when you have an actor who's acting on a set for a really long period of time, he becomes less and less believable. You think that with more time, the character would become more and more polished. He said because there's so much comfort in playing that character, the audience somehow loses trust in the character's authenticity.
Really? That's interesting.
So his whole focus and purpose on the set was to create all sorts of distractions to make the actors uncomfortable so that they could be caught off guard and be more focused on being more true to their role. So there's a little bit of that discomfort that like, oh my gosh, he would bring in dogs and have them bark and break light bulbs and do all kinds of weird things on set on purpose. They have no idea what to expect, but that edginess is what made that show so much more believable as far as their acting goes and why it lasted for so long. That's what he said to me.
So how does that tie into the believability of being Jewish?
So for most people, unfortunately, they're doing it by rote. They're doing the same thing over and over again. Right. And you could be great at that. I could wake up every morning. I could do my prayers. I could keep my kosher and just doing the same thing. But there's no real depth. And for us, we say that learning is equivalent to everything. Education, education, education. Because the paradox of knowledge is the more I know. Not.
Right.
And hopefully, as you become a older, better version of yourself, you realize how much of a gap you have in your own knowledge.
Yeah, I feel like, by some right, it's easy to start growing and it's easy to grow until you reach a certain point. It becomes actually really difficult to grow farther than that because now you are entering into a world, or people enter into a world that actually changes or alters what they're used to or takes them outside of, the same level of observance as their family or their close friends. It's like we all want to continue to keep growing, but at the same time, that's really, really challenging. It's really hard to keep going and to, keep enlightening ourselves when we know it's going to take us to a place of almost separation from the people and the things that we love. I myself struggle with that because I of course I want to keep growing spiritually, but there are certain things that I'm used to from, my life, and growing up that way that are hard to move away from because moving away from those things would, create, I believe they would, sort of like create distance between me and the people that are closest to me.
Yeah, I think I used to think that way too, and it's a mistake because when you're in a place of growth, what ends up happening is you pull the people with you. You're not pushing it anyway. As long as your growth isn't accusatory, well, why aren't you doing what I'm doing?
Yeah, like not to be judgmental.
And I think if you're open and you're like, this isn't my journey, and I'm not forcing it upon anyone else around me, and I'm being true to who I am, and I'm being consistent with what I believe, and my belief leads to action. I think that the opposite happens. I started my own family. When I decided I wanted to be more observant, I didn't push a thing on my family. In the beginning, they were a little hesitant, resistant. Like, why are you dressing like that? Why are you speaking like that? What are you mumbling before you eat? Why aren't you going out with us to these places? Why won't you touch your aunt? Why do you And I got so much pushback. You have to understand, like my bar mitzvah, I wish I could show you pictures, but I haven't seen my own bar mitzvah pictures in a long time. I was bar mitzvah in Israel at the Kotel. And then from there, we had like a party bus that took us to Tel Aviv to like this crazy, we rented out our own dance club. We had belly dancers and whatnot and whatever it is. And
your parents knew enough to bar mitzvah you in Israel.
Oh yeah, that they knew, but it was about the party. It was more about the bar than the mitzvah,
Right.
So
yeah. Well, I feel like in modern Judaism, that's most of the time it's really like that.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was more like a traditional sense of Judaism, but it was like my mom said to me, we know that religion is opium for the masses, and it's about not thinking, it's about surrendering, and kind of not being who you're supposed to be. It's about control. And it took me a while to kind of realize where that thinking came from and why it was wrong. I understand why people think that because, there's no self-expression. No, it's true that there's less self-expression when it comes to groups. And therefore, as Jews, we need to untangle the way we learn about our Judaism from the people that we observe around us versus the core of what the actual text wants us to do. So we kind of get caught up in all kinds of stereotypes because of how we perceive our Judaism, how it's being perceived by the people that are keeping it around us.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, but when you actually look at what it wants at its core, very often it's not being expressed the way the text wants it to be expressed.
Yeah, there's always something. There's always something embedded in those words.
Yeah, because community has its own, life.
I understand that your wife also came from a similar background.
Yeah.
And she also, went on the journey. How did you guys meet?
Great question. I had a friend named Karen who was a good friend of mine, a girlfriend, not a dating friend, but like a girl that I was a friend with, who I had a friendship with, platonic relationship. And she was, I actually got her a gift. I wanted her to go to Israel, bought her a ticket. She went to a seminary in Israel, and she met my wife there. When she came back, my wife was starting at Barnard. Actually, she wasn't starting. She was continuing a semester. She came back. They were at a wedding, and Karen's like, I know the best guy for you. She calls me, and she's like, I know the best girl for you. And I'm thinking, Karen, I love you, but there's no way you know any girl for me. She was a smoker, like a more tomboyish, would swear a lot. I'm like, not as refined of a girl that I would want to be with at the time. But she was right. And the truth is, and I often tell the story, the thing that made what Karen said to me that made my wife sound so attractive. This is 1997, pre-Facebook, pre-Googling images, pre-finding any information about anyone.
Yeah.
She was from Ohio.
Wow, it really was such a different time where you really just had to take people's word for it.
Yeah.
Couldn't text anyone a picture.
And when I was growing up and you wanted a picture, you had to go to the store and get it developed, and you had to wait to see if the picture was actually a good picture.
Wow.
How many times did you develop film and there was nothing came out? So she said, I'm like, okay, she's from Ohio, X. She's studying at Barnard, X. She's listen, I don't know, I just didn't, nothing compelling. But the one thing that was so compelling about her was that she spent twice a week traveling from Barnard to a seminary in Brooklyn. She took a train an hour and a half each way to take a couple of Jewish classes in Brooklyn.
So she was kind of already on her way.
Yeah.
With her journey.
She started earlier. She started in high school already, and her being in Israel was her way of she spent, I think, a year in Barnard, took a year off, and then came back again. And that's where they met, in that in-between spot. And the fact that she was so committed to her education, and she was going to spend an hour and a half traveling twice a week to continue that search for knowledge, I'm like, I got to meet this person.
Yeah, that's intriguing.
Yeah, that was intriguing. That's what got me. Nothing else wasn't really motivating, but that was the motivating thing. Like, this girl travels like that. Wow, that's impressive. All the way from the Upper West Side, all the way to Brooklyn. I want to meet this girl.
And what inspired her to engage in her spiritual side?
Yeah, listen, she's also a deep thinker, and I can't say one particular thing. Her grandparents were Holocaust survivors, and she had a high school program that she was on that was a learning-based program, and Jewish text-based learning is what got her interested in her Judaism. It was a fluke that she was on that program or whatever it was, and that's how. And then NCSY, if you're familiar with that,
sure.
She was very involved in NCSY.
In high school, I went to a bunch of those Shabbatons, those weekends.
So she was a regional president somewhere, and so she was very involved already.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. And how long are you married for?
We this past September was our 25th anniversary.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, and when you went on your first date, did you know right away?
No.
No.
I did not know right away. It was actually interesting. Our first date was November 17th or 18th, 1997. It was a Tuesday. And we went out to a place called Taveri 84. I don't know if you remember it.
Yeah, of course.
I think it closed down since.
You know what made that place so good, though, is that it was run by non-Jewish Italians.
Oh, that's what it is. Whatever. I mean, I didn't know about it. I never ate there before.
Yeah.
I have an older sister. I'm like, I'm going out. I'm in the city. She's like, this is my favorite restaurant. Just go there.
Yeah,
I didn't
great
realize
field chop.
how expensive it was and what I was projecting, because that's not what I was. But we had a great first date there. And then that Friday, I was working. I was a full-time student.
I was going to ask you, like, what were you doing to sustain yourself during this time in your life?
I was a student at Brooklyn. I was a full-time student at Brooklyn College. I was studying biology. I was a pre-med student. I was working at an organization called OHEL, which was a home for people with mental disabilities. And that was what I was earning. That was my salary. That's how I paid for college. There was no getting gifts from taking out loans for college,
right.
Buying your own books. I remember spending like $1,500 on books. I'm like, oh my Lord.
They always get you with the books.
It kills you on the books.
Yeah, they always get you with the books. And you have no choice.
You have no choice. And then I was doing all of that, and I was in yeshiva in the morning. I helped start yeshiva in Brooklyn. At the time, it was called Tiferet Bachorim. Started with 7 guys, had 100 by the time I was done over there, over 100. So morning was waking up, 8 o'clock, my first minyan, 9 o'clock classes, Jewish classes until 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock I had my lunch, got to college campus around 2 o'clock, 2:30 your classes until about 7 o'clock. And then I'd have all night, from like 10 o'clock until 7 o'clock in the morning, doing overnights and on weekends. I only had one night off.
Wow, you were really hustling.
I was hustling. I had one night off. I had Tuesday nights off. That was my only night for dating. So that's why I remember it was a Tuesday.
So that was date night for
you guys? That was date night for us. So we went on Tuesday, and it happens to be that Shabbat, that first Shabbat, was Parashat Chayei Sarah. I remember it. I was asked by a guy named Rabbi David Felsenthal from Cleveland, from Columbus. He wasn't from Cleveland, so I didn't make the connection Cleveland and Columbus right near each other. He had asked if there were students on campus that were very actively involved. He was doing a ASAP Shabbaton, American Students Activating Pride. Wouldn't go very well with that word today.
Yeah.
But it was about, he had all these Jews that came back from the former Soviet Union. These were college kids who had never had a Shabbat experience. And were you willing to be like a leader and pair up with a couple of these, kids from the former Soviet Union and do a Shabbat with them? I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. So I came down there and I see this girl that I'm dating. She's at the Shabbaton.
Wow.
So I'm thinking well, this is on my campus. What are you doing here? It just happens to be that the same rabbi, she knew the rabbi from NCSY who was organizing it, and he had asked her to come also. So we spent that whole Shabbat together. And then I drove her back Saturday night, and then Sunday there was some conference at the OU that I was at and she's at. So we just spent 4 days very quickly with each other. And then we went out again on a Tuesday. So it was 4 dates within 7 days. Wow. It was very fast. But it took us a while to kind of close the deal.
Yeah, I hear that. So I find that you're the voice of wisdom for so many in the community, especially as it relates to matters of the heart. What would you say are the key pieces of advice you give to every couple?
Yeah, that's a great question. Every couple has to overcome the expectation of what that relationship is going to be. We often play this game of, if this person is doing X, Y, and Z, it must be because of A, B, and C, because that's what my experience has showed me. And this is a mistake. We should never assume that we understand why anyone is doing anything. You always have to assume that you have no idea why anyone's doing anything, and you have to ask the question, why did you do what you just did? And in that process, because men and women are very different, we think differently, we perceive the world very differently, you'll learn something more about who you're married to, and more importantly, hopefully about yourself. So it's getting rid of the preconceived notions of, the action, and being humble enough to say, just tell me what you're doing. I want to understand why. Stop seeing your spouse as an opponent and start seeing them as an extension of yourself. Don't relate to your spouse or marriage as a merger of two corporate entities, and instead see them as part and parcel of your own essence and your own being. another way of looking at the world through a different set of lenses. I like to say that in the same way you have your conscious and your subconscious, you have what Sigmund Freud would say was the id and the ego and the superego. You have another level of consciousness that's outside of you. That's part of who you are. It's another voice. And her expression, her want, her desire, her concern is actually a part of you. And it takes a long time to kind of recognize that your spouse is not just some person that you're living with, but really a part of your most inner being. And therefore, I would say that identity often plays a very big role in creating barriers between people, because we've been taught our whole lives that the purpose of life is to achieve independence. Well, how do you... And success is about independence. I want to be an independent businessman. I want to be independent. We always talk about independence.
Right.
And that value, while it's important to get independence from your family so you could create your own, but when it comes to a marriage, it destroys the relationship, independence. You want to achieve something called interdependence in a marriage. And that value is even higher than being independent.
Just write that down.
Yeah.
Interdependence.
Yeah, that's what you're aiming for. Where each of you can be, and we don't like that word. You tell a woman she's got to be interdependent. What do you mean? It's all about...
Well, how do you define interdependent?
Interdependent means that you recognize that there's certain things you bring to the table that she can't, and there's certain things she brings to the table that you can't. And then you become this symbiotic, couple.
You synchronize.
You synchronize, yeah.
Yeah, I actually got a great piece of advice when I was on my way out of a bad relationship. This person said to me, two people in a relationship are not supposed to compromise. Right. And it's where it's a very common thing. Marriage is about compromise. And sure, when it comes to maybe where you're going to live one day or where you'll send your kids to school or what you'll have for dinner on a Wednesday night, that makes a lot of sense. We compromise on the things we want in those contexts. But at the end of the day, when it comes to your values and who you really are, two people are supposed to synchronize,
right?
Not compromise.
Yeah.
It's kind of similar to I went through a little bit of a career struggle in the context of, I have my real estate business that I love to do, but I also have my creative side and my creative business that I love to do. You're right. And I was trying to think to myself, and I was asking someone else for advice, how do I balance these two things? Because they both require my everything. Right. And they said to me, they're like, you don't balance two things that you love. We never balance the things that we love in our life. We harmonize them. We make them work together, and we make them work in synchronicity. And keeping that in mind has really it's really leveled me up in my career and being able to incorporate both of these elements into my life on a day-to-day basis.
Beautiful.
So I'm really into that. I like what you said about that. What would you say are the most common issues that you find amongst young couples in this day and age?
I think most young couples have ridiculous expectations of what the marriage is supposed to be for them. Some people, marriage is about, the marriage will make you into a better person. The marriage will fix the issues that you have been working with, or you've ignored the issues. Just going back a little bit to the idea of, being circumstance and preparing through circumstance. I really believe that there's a karma that goes around. I believe God has a plan, and I believe that there is you have two choices you have to make about learning versus experience. You're going to grow no matter what. It's going to happen. It's either going to come by choice, by putting in the effort, the work, the spiritual, intellectual work to move you, to grow you. You want to grow in your business, you're going to have to make some hard choices. Are you going to invest in developing yourself, building, networking, going out? Are you hustling? Or circumstance is going to force you to do it. I got to pay the bills.
It'll be thrust
upon you. It's going to be thrust upon you.
Yeah.
Same is true with every aspect of our lives. If you don't work on making the relationship great, it's going to collapse. And you're going to be going through a lot of stress and a lot of hardship that you're going to have to overcome. So either way, you're going to grow. You just got to choose which modality you want to use to get there. So I'm more of the ilk that says, be proactive. There is no time to, we say, havodah merubah, the work is a lot and the time is short. You're here to hustle.
Yeah.
in every aspect of your life.
And Judaism teaches us that we're supposed to work hard and put in our effort.
Hard in everything that we do. And therefore, so I find that often couples don't want to put in the work. It's lazy. It's sloppy. You know, if you want to achieve greatness, you got to work really hard.
I think the idea of marriage for many, it's like, it's intoxicating, the whole process and that honeymoon phase, if you will, you know, having a beautiful wedding and having the party and having all your friends there and having everything. And then you wake up the day after the wedding and it's like, okay, now we're in real life mode. And now, like, you know, the honeymoon eventually, like...
I would say, you know, that actually is, I think, the best of it. There are scenarios which are worse. There's so much pressure in the community to get married. Oh, you're nothing if you're not married.
It's the same thing with having children. There's a lot of pressure.
Also with the kids. Yeah. So, well, you think of like a hierarchy and like, oh, you know, this is great. I'm married now. I got there. But like anything that has value to it, if it's unrefined, if it is, you know, it doesn't have a clear vision of how you're going to move forward, it's going to collapse. Same thing with being a parent. How many people are good people but are unprepared to be great parents?
Yeah.
Parenting requires a strategy. There was a famous story with Rav Chaim of Volozhin, who was a rabbi who lived about 150 years ago. Tsarist Russia was trying to implement, you know, new kinds of rules in all education around their provinces, and they wanted to start, you know, putting in a secular education in the Jewish schools. So they came down, this head of education, Ministry of Education came down to meet the rabbi and to interview the kids and students. And the guy was blown away. He's like, your school's off the charts. What you have created here is unreal. He's like, when do these kids start learning? When do they start preparing? So the rabbi said, we start preparing our students for school 20 years before they're born. Meaning the parents have to start the education process for themselves.
Yeah.
You know, and like we've lost that. There's such a focus on, you know, upward mobility, making it, being rich, having materialism. And I want you to have all those things. I believe that you should have everything. Judaism does not believe in aesthetic life, a life void of materialism. We want you to have all the material things, but we don't want you to think that that's the focus.
Yeah, that's the point of it all.
Yeah, that's not the point of it all. The point of all these things is for you to go ahead and do good with it.
How do you address the idea that, you know, many say, well, you know, have children and, you know, the parnassah will come?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's a tough one because I feel like that's the position of a lot of spiritual leaders. Yeah. It's like, you know, each child brings its own good fortune. If you have children, the good fortune will come. You have to have faith. You have to have emunah. It's like now they're placing the weight of emunah on us to have children when maybe we're not fully ready there, you know, for that moment in time.
Listen, you have to both be ready for it, and you have to have emunah and bitachon and trust. You know, it's not enough to have faith; you have to have trust also. And if you would have told me, you know, 25 years ago that you're going to have 6 kids that you're going to have to support, and then you're going to have 2 kids that get married, you're going to have to support, I'd be like, it's impossible. Impossible. It's not happening. Not me. I came from a very modest background. My parents were immigrants. They came to this country with nothing. They had nothing much to give over to me.
How many siblings do you have?
I have an older sister and a younger brother.
Wow. And are they religious?
Yeah, they became more observant over the years.
So you really were the trailblazer.
I kind of like pulled them along without pulling them, without pushing them, inspiring them, hopefully. And my parents were divorced when I was in high school, which was hard. My mom was left with very little. She was a single parent who was raising us. So anything I had, you know, my wedding ring, I had to buy with my own money. You know, anything that I needed, it was just like it was. So
you really understand the hustle.
I know the hustle.
Yeah, you really do.
I lived the hustle. I was working 2 jobs, weekends, is that I know what it's like. So yeah, I think there is truth to it, believe it or not. I think there is something to be said about letting go and believing and letting go and letting God. Let me explain that. There was a story I read over Shabbat of a story by the name of Shlomo Cohen, who was a man who owned a grocery store in Bnei Brak in Israel about 50 years ago, and you know, he had a fruit store, and some guy opens up exactly the same store across the street from him. So he calls the guy up. He says, listen, you know, I'm going to help you out. This is how you want to set up your fruit. These are the vendors you want to use. And like his kids find out about this whole conversation he had with him. He's like, Dad, are you nuts? He's your competitor.
Yeah.
He's like, no, he's not. He says, every Rosh Hashanah, God decrees how much money I'm going to make.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm going to thank this guy because I'm going to make the same amount of money by working less.
That's really good. Yeah,
So it was just like, it's an attitude. Now, if you're the kind of person that could actually, you and your spouse are in that place where that's the world that you could live in, don't worry about it. It's going to can you explain to me how you're able to do what you're doing right now?
But does that mean that we're not supposed to believe in the spirit of competitiveness?
No, the opposite. All you're in control of is your effort. You're not in control of the result. There are two people that do exactly the same thing. One guy's killing and the other guy's not.
Yeah.
I can't explain why he's not. I just know that everyone's in a position where they get what they need.
Yeah.
So I think of it more of like this, more of a holistic kind of way. Like, you know, every person has a particular mission in this world. He, she has to work on developing themselves and becoming something more. The circumstances that you find yourself in are not accidental. There were no other parents that could have raised you, no other parents that could have given you what you needed, no other set of circumstances that you could have found yourself in that would allow you to become the best you. Now, it's, well, how am I responding to my environment? It's my choices. It's me.
Absolutely.
We believe according to the pain is the reward, the effort, the work.
Yeah.
You know, so, and the result, lo alecha ligmor hadavar, the Mishnah says, it's not up to you to finish things.
Yeah.
But you got to start everything.
Yeah. And also most of us have everything and we forget that.
We have so much.
I know, like me, even myself, like there was a moment in time where I was actually sitting down with Rabbi Mizrahi.
Sure.
And he's like, what's going on? How's everything? How's work? And I'm like, listen, it's really hard. Like, you know, between the kids and the expenses and the rent and this, and, you know, the market is tough and this and that. And he looks at me and he goes, you remember this is what you prayed for, right? You know? Right. So, and it's absolutely right. Like when we take a moment to step back, it's like, I have everything. You know, I have my kids, I have my home, I live in New York City, you know, I'm in a great business and I have all this opportunity in front of me. And that's, you know, that's really like just trying to be happy with our lot, right? You know?
I've heard this from so many different kinds of people, you know, that have said to me, like, you know, I worked from the time I was 25 until I was 50. And then when I was 51, I made more money that 1 year than I did in the, you know, 15, 18, 20 years of working before. So there's something, we're working towards something. If you're really someone, if you're not just sitting back on your laurels and you're doing nothing, right? If you're really proactively working and you're building and you're responsible, you'll get there.
Yeah.
We're living in a world of abundance.
Yes, we are.
And the Torah's mindset, even in a world of scarcity, that's the case. That's what the world was like 3,000 years ago. It told you, don't worry. You're living in a world of abundance. Stop having fear. What you fear becomes your reality. When you have a negative mindset, that's what you draw to yourself, negativity. You can't kill it.
Yeah, no, I believe in that completely. I'm reading a book by Dr. Joe Dispenza called You Are the Placebo. And he talks about, he opens the book by sharing all these stories of people who, like one, for example, people who had knee problems, they couldn't walk and they went in for a surgery, but they actually didn't do surgery on them. They just made an incision and then sewed it up.
Right.
Then when they woke up, they believed that they were fixed and now they could walk. Like they could actually walk and they have no problems and this and that. And it wasn't until a decade later that they found out that they didn't even have knee surgery. Right. Or the same idea that, you know, like we can, you know, we if we bring on the thoughts of negativity in our life, you know, if we're scared of getting cancer, God forbid, or anything like that, like we can bring that, you know, upon ourselves. But, you know, it's like the idea of the book is that we really have the power to, you know, rewire our brain with thought and belief.
Your thought defines your reality.
Yes.
So if you have a negative mindset, you're going to draw negativity to you.
Yes.
If you have a positive mindset, you're going to draw that positivity. It's when you start believing in your own success, not being haughty and arrogant, but in the work, in the hustle of becoming something more. Yeah. You'll start drawing that to you. Yeah. You have to let go. The most successful people on the planet don't believe and are not focusing on the failure. They're only thinking about how they can succeed. Right. So it's that singular focus now, but the fact that you and I are living in a world of abundance, there's infinite possibilities. the idea that you're going to go hungry or you're not going to have the things that you need is absurd.
Right.
You'll have everything. It's just an excuse. It's a weird, old, prehistoric part of the software that we have to get rid of, and we have to upgrade it. And Judaism has been screaming at us for generations now, saying, "Let go."
Yeah. What would you say really threatens the growth of young people in this generation?
Not working, not believing they need to work on their relationship, not. This has happened so often. People spend all this time in courtship. I'm going to marry that person. I'm going to put my best. I'm going to dress nice. I'm going to speak. I'm going to prepare. I'm going to be organized. And then when you get married, the whole thing is gone. Stops. What happens? Why does courtship end when you get married?
Yeah.
It shouldn't. If anything, you have to ramp it up afterwards.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Like I'm getting a staycation tonight. I have yesterday I told my wife, we just had a wedding a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, I just need to get away. I get a phone call. Rabbi, I have a hotel room. It's right here, not too far from here. It's like, it's yours for the night. Just take it. I'm like, what? My wife's there. She's like, why did you ask for a vacation? You should ask for something different. But I'm like, that's what I need right now. I need to get away. I just need to get away.
That's nice. A staycation is nice.
And we don't do it enough.
Yeah.
We don't date anymore. You have kids. It's over. No. You have to be as proactive in building this relationship. Build as many positive memories as you can with each other. Don't wait for a circumstance to come that forces you to get away. Always be proactive. You need to spend time with your spouse. Don't allow it just to be about the kids. Raise the kids. You need mommy and daddy time. Someone asked me at my son's wedding, like, Rabbi, how do you raise good kids? I'm like, I don't know, but I could tell you one secret is that if you work on loving your spouse and your spouse works on loving you, and children see parents that are in love, you're gonna have awesome kids.
Yeah. That's
But that's on us. That's not going to happen on its own. Anything meaningful, anything valuable in this world requires effort. The same is true with our relationships. We don't work on it. I read a new book every year on marriage. I still do it.
Really?
Yeah. I can give you 25 books to read. I can give you, it's constant. It's going to be for the rest of your life. If you want this to be great, you want to be a marriage Olympian, well, how are you working on it?
I do want to be. Really, I feel so fortunate to have Deborah.
You are very fortunate.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm very, very fortunate. So yeah, like I do profoundly want to work on that, and I do really want to, create that bliss in our marriage forever.
And that's a trickle-down effect. When you're feeling successful in one area of your life, it feeds into every other area of your life.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's like that's another thing. Another rabbi gave me this advice that, the three things that we should always be working on are Shalom Bayit, peace in the home, Shabbat, and Maaser.
Yeah.
If you work on those three fundamentals, then your life will be perfect.
Correct.
And I like that one. What has been the most fulfilling part of your journey in Judaism?
For me, the most fulfilling part has been meeting the people that I've met over the last 25 years. I was a campus rabbi after we got married in 1998. We moved to Israel. If you would have asked me then, I would never have told you I was going to be a rabbi. I wasn't spending time in yeshiva, learning beyond what I did in college. And 1 year turned to 4, rabbi program. And part of that was part of the program, and the stipend was conditional that I came back to America and spent 2 years doing some kind of education, teaching outreach in America. And I ended up back on Brooklyn College campus as the rabbi, the Hillel House, and the campus rabbi at Brooklyn, and the chaplain at Long Island University. I spent time meeting with people, young people. And I got the opportunity to kind of give them a little bit, some of the wisdom, some of the things I learned along the way of my own journey, and hopefully helping them find their own way and meaning in life. That's been the best part of my job. And then I guess the greater part of it is watching those people's lives change as a result of it. That the blessing, I guess, most people in the world of outreach education don't last for very long. It's a very, very, very high burnout rate. And I think it's because most people don't see success. And if I don't believe my success is my own. I believe that my success comes from something more, something beyond me. I think of myself as being a waiter at the right place at the right time and just serving something that doesn't belong to me, to other people. When you're blessed with being someone who's genuine, people genuinely want to meet genuine people. And so I've attracted a lot of people along the journey, and they've come along for the ride.
And is there a particular piece of advice you would offer someone who's considering taking a similar path as you? I know you touched on this a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I would say don't be afraid. Remember that the quality of your life is an expression of the quality of the questions you're going to ask. And ask great questions.
What are you most proud of in your work, and what do you expect will be the key contributor to your success for years to come?
That's a good question. I think of my work.
I got a lot of those.
I think of my work and my life as being kind of interwoven. I don't see my work, my career as being separate from my identity. Like it's like, well, I'm a doctor, and I think being a rabbi really just means trying to be a good person, and trying to inspire the people around you to aspire for more. And I would say that, the one thing that I'm most proud of is my relationship with my spouse and my family.
Would you say that's part of the reason why you seem to devote a lot of time to helping young couples and to speaking about marriage? Like you said, you read a book about marriage every year. So would you say that that's really what kind of drives that passion for all of it?
Yeah, I think some of it is driven by the fact that, my parents did not have a successful marriage. And I was determined not to repeat the mistakes, and I wanted to figure out how to understand this, how to get it right. I really believe at the core of what Judaism wants is to create happy families. You build a happy family, you build a happy community, you build a happy country, a world. And that at the core of Judaism, it's about being someone who's taking responsibility for your life as a person, your spouse, your family, caring for them, providing them, creating the boundaries necessary. So I would say that for me, like that's what it is. It's about building relationships. And the same muscle that I use to build a relationship with my spouse is the same muscle I use to build a relationship with myself, with my sibling, and God.
That's a great one. I only have a couple more questions.
Go for it.
And then I'll have you out of here. Sure. Tell me a little bit about Chazak.
Sure.
You guys you created this relatively recently, or it existed and you got involved relatively recently. But what is it and why was it created?
Sure. Chazak is an outreach organization that was started in England. Sephardic Jews, which are Jews that come from not just Spain, Sephard means Spanish, but it's become a word that is synonymous with all Jews from Middle Eastern backgrounds. So Jews from Morocco, from Libya, Lebanon, Morocco, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Egypt. These are countries that are identified as being Sephardic, or we call Edot HaMizrach, communities of the East. And in America and in the West in general, they represent a minority of the Jewish population. There are about 5.5 million Jews in America today. How many would you think are Sephardic?
Half?
Yeah, that's what I thought. It's not. It's way less.
Really?
Yeah. 500,000.
Really? That's
10%. Less than 10%.
I was going to say that's like Manhattan alone.
Right, but it's because we live in a bubble where we're surrounded by Sephardim, and and you actually do the math around it. It's tiny. It's a small sliver of the Jewish community.
Yeah.
And I think there's something unique about having a Sephardic identity, and Sephardi culture and Judaism is different than our Ashkenazi counterparts. I'm not an elitist. I don't think it's greater. I just think it's better. And I think that I want to do everything in my power to preserve it and to give those communities that don't have the infrastructure or the understanding of the identity a place where they can express it. So it's keeping them together. There's a different vibe, a different type of event, culture, education, language that you're using to communicate Judaism to those groups. So you have the classical, educational organizations around the world, even outreach ones like Aish Torah, which is awesome, but it's for Ashkenazim, and
Right.
It will relate to many Sephardim. They'll find it, but it's not. They'll always see themselves as an outsider in that system. So the goal was to create a educational system of growth and outreach for Sephardim by Sephardim. We accept all Ashkenazim. We don't discriminate.
I'm sure a lot of your subscribers on YouTube are Ashkenaz.
I'm sure most of them are, by the way, and I think that it's awesome. Like I want to maintain that aspect of our culture, our community, and I think that there's something that we as a Sephardic community have to impart to the broader Jewish world. There is a more accepting, familial, communal stance that you have in a Sephardic community that you don't have in Ashkenazim. Ashkenazim are divided by denominational Judaism. Oh, you're Reform, conservative, Reconstructionist, this and that. I'm like, yeah, whatever that is. We don't have that really in the Sephardic world. You have a little bit of it, and that's more of an expression of being in America. The only Reform Sephardic temple that exists is in California. It's Persian. Otherwise, everything else is Orthodox. I don't like the term Orthodox. I don't even like calling myself Orthodox.
Right.
I like to think of myself as being under constructionist. And someone,
that's a good one.
Someone who sees himself as
in
development and growing, and there's a process.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Judaism wants at its core also. And I think that the Sephardic community kind of like, they express that part of Judaism, I think, most succinctly. They embody that. That was the word.
Yeah.
They embody that. They're an embodiment of that. You could see in a Sephardic temple someone who's very religious and someone's very irreligious.
Yeah.
Someone who drove to synagogue and someone's got a cell phone in his pocket and someone who's sitting there and has his Psalms out and reading all night. I love that.
Yeah, I like it too.
Yeah, there's something beautiful about that.
Yeah.
I love the fact that we're diverse, but yet we all feel interconnected. So that is the thing that I think Chazak is trying to preserve. We don't want to lose anyone because of denominationalism. We want to keep everyone in, and we want to inspire them to learn more about the depth and the beauty of their culture.
I love that. That's
Thanks.
awesome.
Yeah.
My last question for you: do you think you'll ever move to New York City?
That's a great question. I would love to. I don't think my wife's on board.
We'd love
right
to
now.
have you.
And there are financial costs to that right now. Although even though God is abundant, the abundance has not flown in that direction yet. But if there is an opportunity, I will be spending more time in Manhattan. I told Rabbi Farhi about this a couple of weeks ago. I said I just can't. The drive, it takes me an hour and a half sometimes to get here in the morning. And train, if I miss it, it's too it's complicated getting from Long Island to the city.
Yeah, you're also in the Five Towns,
I'm
which
in the
is
Five Towns, not ideal,
not easy to commute to the city
at all. And I'm just going to be sleeping in the city more often now.
You should.
Yeah, so I'll be staying here more often. I'm here for Shabbat.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so,
that's great. Which minyan?
I don't know. It's both of them apparently, first and the second. But I'll be here. I'll be sleeping in the city Monday nights because I have a late night Monday nights with the young professionals, and and Wednesday and Tuesday nights and Wednesday nights. So I'll be here a lot.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully more often.
Make sure you get their bedroom right.
Make sure they get the bedroom right. Listen, we are working towards finding spaces so where we can have I can be here more often. God willing, we'll get there.
Oh, I would love that. I'd love to see that.
Me too.
Thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate it. This was a really good conversation. I feel like I learned a lot from this one, and I think the listeners will too.
I hope so. If anyone has any questions, find me. I'm happy to answer.
Yeah. Well, I'll link everything in the description. Chazak,
Awesome.
your personal stuff.
Awesome.
So we'll make it pretty easy to find you.
Thank you so much, Ariel.
Thank you, Rebbe. You sure you don't want to drink?
Yeah, I'll have a drink.
All right, just a little one.
You got it.
Just to close us out. Which one do you want?
I'll try the private reserve oak series.
A little ice.
Yeah, I'll take a little ice in that.
Cool. It's early in the day, but no one needs to know that.
No one needs to know. No one knows how early it is actually right now.
Yeah.
or how late it is for that matter.
Exactly. No one knows that this is a light afternoon.